What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about the recently released Castlevania Advance Collection. As of the recording of this video, I think it's pretty safe to say that overall, people are extremely happy with the Advance Collection. It has a ton of great quality of life options available. In the actual collection itself, it has 3 amazing games: Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, which is one of the best rated Castlevania games of all time. We also have Circle of the Moon in that collection, which in my opinion is more of a cult classic, but still a very great Castlevania experience. And then of course Harmony of Dissonance, very much modeled after the Symphony of the Night aesthetic and gameplay. So with all 3 of these games in the collection being remastered with save states, rewind functionality, all of the different languages available and different regional differences available to play in the same collection, all of the stuff that you would love to have when practicing for a speedrun, which is amazing. So in my mind, it makes me think that Konami cares about the speedrunning scene of their games, at least for this release, and it makes me hopeful for the future. So great news if you are a Castlevania fan going forward. And it also makes you wonder, what could they possibly have in store for the future if they decide to go down this route of re-releasing some of their classic games? I think it's pretty obvious that the next collection Konami might be releasing would be a collection of their DS Castlevania games in some sort of DS collection. The Nintendo DS games have never been re-released since their initial run all the way back in the late 2000s. So being able to play them in a modern way outside of emulating them would be fantastic. Current DS emulation isn't 100% perfect. It's not terrible. You can get by playing games currently using modern DS emulators, but in all reality, it's not great. It's very clear that if they do a collection of some sort, it will be emulation for the DS games. It's just the easiest way to get the games out available in a collection like this. Not to say that just having pure emulation is a bad thing. Obviously, we've seen the emulator being used for the Advanced Collection is accurate, it runs well, and then there's a ton of fantastic features that come alongside using an emulator. So, with all that in mind, I wanted to take a moment to maybe speculate on what a potential DS collection could include to make it the best possible collection. And there's a few things that I wanted to go over. For example, I think for a DS collection to be the definitive version of these games, which is what I think most people would prefer, seeing as how you can't really buy the DS games anywhere other than buying the physical cartridges themselves and playing them on a DS. So what would make these the definitive versions of these games if they were to be re-released? I believe that, especially for the DS games, the biggest hurdle is going to be how they decide to implement the touch controls, because touch controls are very different between games. For example, in Dawn of Sorrow, one of the most contentious mechanics of the game is going to be how you interact with the seals that the game gives you. Every time you are fighting a boss, before you can defeat the boss for real, you have to input a seal icon on the screen to seal them away and defeat them for good. This mechanic is not great. I think it's universally considered the worst mechanic added to that particular game, that is. Other than that, the DS game Dawn of Sorrow is absolutely amazing. In my opinion, it's probably my favorite out of the more modern Metroidvania-style Castlevania games, outside of Symphony of the Night, of course, which is my favorite game of all time. But I think it would help for a lot of people to have the option to just turn off the need for the seals to be a thing. It wouldn't make the game like a one-to-one parody with the original, but in all honesty, that mechanic could be lost without too much fuss, to be honest. And there are patches of the game that do exist that complete the seal for you once you defeat the boss the first time and the seal prompt comes up. So I think it would be in Konami's best interest to just kind of sweep that mechanic under the rug, or at least have an option to turn it off for casual players, and maybe have an option to keep it on for it to be in parity with the original. But I do think that seal mechanic is very has not aged well. I will say the seal mechanic has not aged well, so having a way to remove it or not have to deal with it, I think would be great, especially considering when you're porting this to modern platforms, having access to touch controls is going to be pretty awkward. I imagine the best way to do it for a console would be to map the movement of the touch controls to like the right stick or something like that, like the right analog stick. But yeah, I could see that not going so well for the accuracy, because some of these seals are very, very finicky with the inputs that they allow, and you have to do it in, you have to touch each corner of the seal in the right order with the right line being drawn, and trying to do that on analog controls might be too difficult. So I think just having an option to remove the seals altogether is probably best. I imagine if you're playing it on like a PC, you can map the touch controls to like mouse movement, and that might make it not too bad, but again, it's not a perfect solution at all. So outside of Dawn of Sorrow, I don't think touch controls will be too much of an issue. There are bonus characters that have to deal with touch control in general, like when you're playing the Sisters mode in Portrait of Ruin, they are controlled by the touchscreen. Same with Albus in Order of Ecclesia. There's a touchscreen specific mechanics for Albus as well. But those are extra modes at the end of the day, and if they do decide to map the touch screen to like the right stick, it probably will play fine, but overall those aren't like the main focus of the game, so I don't see that being too much of an issue. The main issue I foresee going forward is definitely going to be Dawn of Sorrow's seal mechanic, because that is a main portion of the game, basically locked behind touch controls. So Dawn of Sorrow aside, I think the rest of the games will play extremely well on modern consoles. I mean, they are 2D side-scrollers, and the second screen we've seen from games like the Mega Man Zero collection, you can map two separate screens in a 1080p, 16:9 resolution pretty okay. There might be some awkward bordering, but you can put some nice artwork on the side and stuff like that, which we've already seen from the Advanced Collection. There is a ton of effort and detail put into these extra menus and extra modes and stuff like that. So I don't see any problem with them porting the games over to modern consoles and being able to display everything and making it look nice. I do have faith in them being able to do that. The last thing I want to talk about for this video is a little bit of a secret trend that I've noticed with Konami re-releasing their old games in these collections. There was originally the Classic Collection that was released a little while ago, which had a bunch of classic Castlevania games, as well as a bonus game, Kid Dracula. And that bonus game didn't really fit with the rest of the collection itself. It was just kind of added there as, hey, Kid Dracula is also a Konami game that was released around the same time with a similar vibe, but it's not technically a Castlevania game, but it's added to the collection anyways. And you might think, okay, that's weird as like a one-off thing, but then the Advanced Collection comes out, and not only does the Advanced Collection have Game Boy Advanced Castlevania games, there is another bonus game, which is Dracula X, which was a Super Nintendo kind of reimagining of Rondo of Blood. But yeah, that game was added to the collection as well, even though it doesn't necessarily fit the context of a Advanced Collection because it's not a Game Boy Advance game. So you could think of that again as another bonus game. So the question I have is, if there is to be a DS collection, which I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that with the success of the Advanced Collection, Konami is definitely working on a DS collection in some way, shape, or form. It's just easy money for them. However, will the trend of adding a bonus game continue with a DS collection? It seems pretty plausible that they might do that, and if they were to, which game do you think would be added to the collection? It is my hope and dream, and I go to bed praying every night that Konami, if they decide to do this, that they re-release Castlevania Symphony of the Night on this collection, so that way it could be enjoyed on modern consoles, and not just the version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night that they've been re-releasing, which is based off of the PlayStation Portable version, which has the new voice acting, it has different graphics in some spots, it has different audio in some spots, and it also has different mechanics, different glitches. It's a completely different version of the game, and in my opinion, it's a worse version of the game in a lot of ways, and I'm going to make a separate video explaining all the things that are wrong with it compared to the original, but just trust me when I say that the original version of the game that was released on the PlayStation 1 is the definitive version of the game. We have not seen a re-release of anything looking like the PlayStation 1 version, the original PlayStation 1 version of this game, since 2008 when Digital Eclipse re-released Symphony of the Night for Xbox Live Arcade. This re-release was designed to fit within these weird early restrictions of size limitations on the Xbox Live Arcade. What they ended up doing was they created a really, really well-made port, which already looks amazing. It supports 1080p already, all the way back in 2008. And the game also is modernized in a way that supports faster load times. Because if you look at the original game, there's a lot of moments where slowdown and load times really does take away from the experience. I'm sure most people don't really notice it, but if you're playing the game in a long session, you are spending a decent amount of time looking at black screens waiting for loading, or you are spending a lot of time with the game just slowing down and chugging with a lot of enemies on the screen and stuff like that. This modern version that was released for Xbox Live Arcade doesn't have any of those issues. Whatever they ended up doing to re-release it onto the Xbox ended up optimizing it to not have to deal with any slowdown or lag or anything like that. It is running at a smooth 60 FPS the entire time you are playing the game. Last but not least, one of the most important reasons for this to be the port that is used in this collection if they decide to add it to a DS collection, it has the original voice acting. We haven't seen a version of this game with original voice acting since the Xbox Live port.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh. I was called here by humans who wish to pay me tribute.
Dracula, die now and leave this world. You'll never belong here.
Oh, but this world invited me. Your own kind called me forth with praise and tribute.
Something happened. It's pure speculation here, probably something to do with voice acting contracts or rights to certain performances. I don't really know. But once Konami made the PlayStation Portable port of the game for Dracula X Chronicles, that version featured new voice acting, and they've been using that voice acting ever since. But most fans of Castlevania all know the iconic delivery and lines that come along with the original Castlevania Symphony of the Night voice acting, and so much of us miss it still to this day. There is nothing that quite competes with the iconic voice lines and delivery that game, the original voice acting, has. But yeah, that's basically all I wanted to talk about today. If you have any opinions of your own, if you think something else that you would like to see in a DS collection or future collections from Konami in the future, I would love to hear it in the comments below. If you liked the video, please leave a like and possibly consider subscribing, because it does help the channel out a lot. And with all of that done today, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.